Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Verl Workman. We have an exciting guest with us today, and I am fired up as we're letting the program load for just a minute. We'll get everybody on. I want to wish you all a happy new year. I hope things are going well. I can't believe we're already deep into February, and the month's almost halfway gone, and a lot of agents are still trying to get their business plans done and figure out where they're going to do this year. These webinars that we do each month for the people who have opted in and wanted to be part of the Workman family are designed specifically to help you make a difference in your business and your life. And today we have an amazing guest. We have Master Coach, rockstar team leader, and great speaker, Cleve Gaddis, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Cleve, thanks for being on the call today.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me. It's a great opportunity.
You know, Cleve is one of the people that when I listen to him talk, I always think about how much preparation and thought goes into every message he delivers, and it makes me want to be a better leader and a better speaker. Today's topic is the 7 key tools.
It's a little bit of a curse. So if you spend as much time tossing things over in your head as me, it makes you go crazy.
Yeah, it comes out smooth on the other end. I think that's a good thing. Hey, everybody, as we're getting ready to start right here, if you'll look down at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, there's a place that says Q&A. And so if you have questions for Cleve or for me about any topic or anything that we're talking about, type your questions in there so we can see it. And then we'll do our best during the call to ask your questions to Cleve and be able to have some interaction. One thing when you're dealing with a professional is that you can't throw them off his game. And so, you know, ask the hard questions. If something comes up that is you struggle with, you've heard him speak before, and something's resonated with you, you want to know more about it, get deeper into it, let's make sure that we take advantage of this Master Coach while we have him on the call. The other thing is at the end of the call today, we're going to give you, actually I'm going to give you a link for it right now, but Cleve is going to give you 7 leadership secrets for 2020 and beyond that will absolutely change the way you lead. And it doesn't mean you have to be a team leader. It's the way that you lead, period. The way you lead your families, the way you lead in your office, the way you lead your Sunday school group. We all have opportunities to lead. Cleve took and he wrote out the entire thought process behind his whole presentation of how he was going to deliver the content. And he's made that available to everybody. If you can go to workmansuccess.com/7 tools to download the copy of his presentation and have access to our free disc assessment as well as our coaching consultation. Chet, did we lose Cleve?
It looks like it. I'm trying to get him back on right now.
Okay. So as Cleve's dialing back in, now's a good time if you have somebody, I see somebody raising their hand, but if you have a question, just type it in the message bar, and I'll do my best to answer that while we're waiting for Cleve to come back in. He was setting up at his office. Maybe he lost his internet. We'll give him a second to come back in. But I will tell you that as we're getting into the beginning of the year, it's been really fun to see how many of our agents have had the very best January and beginning of February than they've ever had in their lives. And the reason isn't because the market is better this January. It's because of the activities they were focused on 90 days ago. And so I would encourage you all to look back at your business 90 days ago and then ask yourself the question, what was I doing 90 days ago to create the business that's happening now? And if you're not that busy right now, it's directly related to the fact that you weren't focused on the right activities 90 days ago. Cleve's texting me saying that he's trying to get back in. So he will get back in. I know Chet's working with him on that. So now's a great time to talk about what it is that is holding you back in 2020. So I'm going to ask you all a question. I'm going to ask you to use your chat bar, wait for Chief to join us, is what do you believe the one thing that is your biggest impediment from doubling or tripling your business in 2020? What is that one thing that's holding you back? And let's spend just a minute, let's talk about how we can solve that. So what is that one thing? So let me see. I love that. Fear of failure. So let's address that for a second. Fear. A lot of people think fear of failure is a big impediment. I think if you're not afraid to fail, then you probably aren't pushing yourself enough. So I like that as I like that as an impediment. Fear of failure is okay. I'm okay with failing. I'm just not okay with not trying. And so I want you to think about that. Fear of failing is meaning I'm afraid I might not succeed. Fear of trying means you won't give it the effort. So Michael Jordan said that, and I love that quote that he said. He says, I'm not afraid of failing, I'm afraid of not trying. So change your attitude. Be okay with being afraid of failing, because we all fail. It's just part of life. It's what you do when you fail that makes the exceptional different from the average. Looks like Cleve is back. I'll do one more really quick. Another one said that I'm afraid of growing my team. And so that's a great question. And that's one that's probably more than I want to tackle at this moment. So let's hold these questions until the end of the webinar, and then we'll engage Master Coach Cleve to help us identify some of these questions or issues you might have. So Cleve, welcome back. I don't know what happened to you there, but we're glad you're back.
Our internet to our entire building went out, so I'm on my mobile phone. Hopefully the audio quality is good, and we'll just keep going. I'm going to have a hard time seeing what you're displaying, but we'll do the best we can.
Well, that's okay. So let's just jump right in, and let's start talking about, first of all, what gives you the expertise to teach about being a great leader?
Being a crappy leader for a long time. I mean, so the reality is I have tried so many things over the years that simply did not work. I had the best intentions. I had other people's interest at heart, and things that just didn't work. And so over time, you start to realize certain patterns and certain trends. And when you do this from a leadership standpoint, it works. And when you do this, it doesn't work. And so I will tell you in full disclosure that I have done way more over the years that has not worked than has worked. But as I get older, I learn the things not to do. So I guess that's what qualifies me.
One of our guests was talking about our excuses for not hitting our goals in 2020, and she said fear of failure. And I think in leadership, a lot of people are afraid to take that mantle of leadership on because they're going to fail as a leader. And I think that's a true, authentic gut check that leaders begin to have. And I'm hoping that you can help us deal with some of those today.
So this is not necessarily one of the topics for today, but if you as a leader feel like, or if I ever feel like it is my responsibility to basically carry on my back all of my team members for success, then you're really opening yourself up to failure almost all of the time. Really, there's no way to succeed in that scenario. But as a leader, it's really our job to create the right environment in which people can be successful and to help them the best we possibly can. And so in a lot of cases, it's our definition of failure that's the problem. It's our definition of success, which gives us our definition of failure that is the problem. So let's just say, for example, you joined my team, Verl, and the reality is that I can teach you what to do. I can give you benchmarks and help you understand how you should perform, but I can't make you do anything. Like, I can't make you do anything. You either want to do it internally or you don't. And so whoever it was who said they didn't want to be a failure as a leader in 2020, my suggestion is you need to set yourself up for lots of failure, because that's the only way you're going to wind up being a success anyway.
Love that. I mean, we fail all the time because we set our goals so high, and right. I call it failing up. Failing up. Like, it's better than we did last year, but we hit the big goal, and I still had a wildly successful year. Failing up is a good thing.
Absolutely.
So who's this good-looking family? Who's this good-looking family were you looking at?
Good-looking family. Oh, I can't see the slide. Sorry, I don't know. I have no idea what we're looking at. Oh, I'm sorry. This is so this is my family, and that's my mom and my dad, and that's my sister there in the back, and right there in the middle, in the center, that's me. The one falling out of the screen who looks like they didn't care if he was in the picture or not, that's my younger brother. And the only reason I wanted to kind of start with a picture like this is because everybody that we deal with on a regular basis has, their own hopes, their own dreams, their own goals. And in some cases, we forget that everybody is unique. And so when I was a kid, I like to talk. I don't know if you know this, Verl, but I like to talk. And so my dad, who you see there in the picture, he was a CPA. And he said probably, I don't know, 16, 18 words like in his entire life. He just didn't talk. It wasn't something that he did. He also didn't smile. So that was an unusual picture for him to be smiling. And my dad was a great dad. He provided me a safe and secure home to live, and he always paid the bills, and he gave me all the opportunities that I could possibly want. But he did not celebrate who I was. So he wanted me to be who he was. And I'm not a CPA. I don't, my solution for a financial problem is to go out and make more money, not to try to figure out how I'm spending the rest of it. It's just, let me go make some more, it'll be fine. And that's not the way he thought. And so he created an environment in which I was not able to celebrate the gifts that God gave me. And it was such a weird thing. And I absolutely love him with all my heart. And he did everything he possibly could. But I like to talk, and I like to come up with ideas, and I like to help people and communicate with people. And in today, I get paid to be on the radio, to talk. And so we have to make sure as leaders that we're very sensitive to the needs of our team members, because they all have their own set of unique goals and circumstances. And they all generally come at life from a vulnerable place. And we're going to talk about vulnerability a little bit later on. So you need to learn where your team members, where their dark places are. And so, because it's so much easier to motivate somebody and to help them succeed and achieve if you can help them understand, if you can understand where their dark places are. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Totally does.
And I'm trying to log back in on my computer real quick too, so I can actually see everything a little bit better. Let's see if you can, see if I can get back in here. Sorry, I think my internet's now working right. Here we go.
Good.
Hang on a minute. Let me. Accountability. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. So we didn't hear accountability. So.
All right, we're gonna talk a little bit later in the presentation about internal accountability. And I actually I had the best example of internal accountability that I've ever had in my entire life in December. So I hurt my knee in November. And so I was having a hard time. I'm standing up now on this call, but I was having a hard time standing up for 45 minutes or an hour doing calls because my knee would hurt so bad. And when I would sit in my chair, my old chair was so uncomfortable that I couldn't stand it. It would hurt my back. So it was a choice of my back hurting or my knee hurting. And I decided, no, I'm going to get a new chair. So this is a Tempur-Pedic fancy office chair. And it's the exact one. I wish I could show you. It's actually sitting over there in the corner of my office right now because I'm standing up. And the chair has a weight limit. And the weight limit is higher than it's just. And so to holiday season would be an understatement. My daughter made Christmas candies, and when I say I ate all of it, I mean like all of it. My girls were like, what is happening? And so I think I probably gained about 8 or 10 pounds over the Christmas season, and I knew that I had to have my internal clock go off to tell me that I needed to lose weight. Well, one day I'm sitting in my office, and I'm sitting down doing coaching calls, and literally, if you can imagine this, I was sitting like this, and then all of a sudden my chair did this. And then a few seconds later, it did this. And then a few seconds later, it did this. And literally disappearing from the screen. And so in my mind, the chair was saying, you have exceeded the weight limit. And the chair was reminding me, I literally was sitting down on the floor. My whole head had almost disappeared. My coaching client was like, where are you going? What are you doing? And because I got instant feedback that I had sort of crossed some type of threshold, then it caused me, Verl, to change my behavior. So in this particular case, it caused me to quit eating candy before all the candy was gone. And so if we could help all of our team members have a way to judge themselves, not for us to be harsh with them and for us to make them feel negative, but for us to just have them have a level of awareness. So there was one thing that I will tell you. When the chair started to drop because of my weight, I was absolutely and positively committed to making sure that stopped. And when I took the 8 or 9 pounds off, it stopped. And so if we had somebody making us be aware of how we have relationships and how we work in business and how we interact with our children, if we had all of that, Verl, it would be an amazing difference. It would be an amazing difference. So point number one, everybody comes from a unique place. Don't assume everybody looks at the world the way you do, because the only way they could would be to grow up like you. And number two, if we can create these processes and systems to create internal awareness, then you will finally get some real movement with all of your agents, especially the ones that you feel like you have a hard time getting them to move in the right direction now.
You know, I was thinking, as you were going through the chair analogy, when you said I was 100% committed, I thought you were going to say on blaming it on the chair and telling the manufacturer they screwed up and getting ahead. You know, I weigh less than the amount. And so how often in personal accountability do we look for every other reason except the fact we gained weight to be the problem?
Yeah. So my default position, by the way, is that the chair was malfunctioning, and I appreciate you pointing out that I left that out of my story. I was trying to hide that part. But so, and the truth is that it should hold somebody that weighs 100 pounds more than I hold. And so the reality is that the chair is not functioning correctly. I will not get the pneumatics in that chair replaced under any circumstances. I will weigh what I need to weigh in order for the chair to hold me up correctly. That's my commitment. Leadership. So if everybody's listening, everybody write down the word whirlwind. Whirlwind. If it weren't for the whirlwind of leadership, leadership would be easy. And so we're dealing with so many different things. What's our vision, and who are we partnering with, and are we successful, and how do we need to develop people's skills, and life gets in the way. And, you know, I could just make that program successful if the program would just work. We're dealing with those kind of things all day, every day. And what we have to do is we have to be very clear about how we lead people, because when we're clear with ourselves about how we lead people, then we know where we need to focus regardless of all of the whirlwind, all of the noise that goes on a daily basis. So Verl, you and I could talk today, and you could give me some very good, clear, clean, easy to do activities that I could use to move forward, but you can't control the fact that when I hang up from this Zoom call, that I'm going to walk outside of the door of my office and life is going to smack me right back in the face. And so what happens?
Someone's going to have a problem with the deal. They're going to have contracts flying at you. You're going to have issues with buyers. An agent's going to need time off that you had scheduled for an open house. The whirlwind is real.
Right. Or my wife calls and there's an issue with one of our daughters we need to deal with, or my mother calls and something's going on at her independent living place. I mean, it's just life in general. And so you have to have very simple reminders of how you're supposed to think as a leader. Because this is very interesting, Verl, and you tell me if you agree with this. Because I'm a salesman. You and I both grew up in the direct sales business. I sold vacuum cleaners, which is a high class thing to sell. You sold hot tubs and satellites, which is kind of low class. Sorry. So we grew up in the sales business. So when something happens around us that is negative that we do not like, we just immediately start looking for a way around it. That's what we do. Well, the problem is nobody in the world understands that way of thinking. They don't get, I shouldn't say nobody. Most people in the world don't understand that way of thinking. So the reality is whatever, if you're a salesperson, if you're an entrepreneur, whatever your first inclination is to do when something happens, I don't know what you should do, but I can almost promise you don't do what you think you should, because the results are not going to be good. Meaning if you're an entrepreneur, you're so driven by the result so here's the way it works. So let's say, Verl, you were one of my new agents and I was trying to train you. It won't take very long for me to say to you this. So now, Verl, when I started, I was in your same situation, and what I did is I just did this and this, and whatever happened, I just figured out ways to work around it. And so basically, if you would just freaking be like me, everything would be fine. Now, I don't say that last part, but that's what they hear. And so what we have to focus on is helping them from where they are. So when we try to influence someone based on our perception of the situation, it's almost never going to land squarely the way we want it to. We have to influence them based on their perception, even if we can't understand their perception at all. So I know, Verl, you have conversations with people all day, every day, and you're like, man, if they would just look at it differently, everything would be fine. And my concept for leaders is if you would look at it differently, everything would be fine. Meaning sometimes people just need to be listened to, even if they're wrong. And that's a hard thing to do as a leader. And it doesn't mean you let people move off in the wrong direction. It means you get where they are, because it helps you sort through all the noise, all the whirlwind. And that's a hard concept. Oh my God, it's so hard.
It's hard in parenting. It's hard in just leading your own family. I mean,
It's hard in being in a relationship. I mean, being married, it's hard to put other people's interests first. So this is what I call the leadership wheel. And today we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about client-centric communication. And we're going to talk about the difference in how you communicate with an A and B lead and how you communicate with a C lead. We're going to talk about the 3 key words that you need to use from a messaging standpoint to the buying and selling public: speed, convenience, and certainty. How to give your core values life. Because in most cases we have core values, but the core values, you'd be better off not to even have any core values, because nobody knows what they mean. So you have them on a piece of paper, but they don't know what they mean or how to live through them. We're going to talk about internal accountability, meeting rhythm. So we're going to talk about the purpose for meetings, which is not what most leaders think they are. And then I have to move my video so I can see it. We're going to talk about vulnerability, which really vulnerability is the single most important thing in terms of being a leader. It is something I have never been good at. So Verl, do you know that if you're perfect in every way, it's very difficult to be vulnerable?
I can't relate to that because I have so many flaws, but I hear what you're saying.
The problem is as leaders, we think we're so good. And unfortunately, I still have a little bit of problem with my ego. I will say it's genetic. I was born with it. So I was marked by my parents. But I never, especially when I was young, never knew how to be vulnerable with other people. Never. And had I learned that skill early on, I would be way ahead of where I am today, I can promise you.
So let's talk about consumer-centric communication a little bit. What do you mean by that?
So most communication in the past in the real estate industry has been product specific. So it's about a home. So the product we sell is we sell houses, or condos or townhomes. And so all of our communication with our consumer or our prospect has been about that particular home. And so the communication as we move forward is going to be changing from not a product specific communication, but a consumer specific. So it's not the house has 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. It is how those 4 bedrooms and 3 baths are important specifically to you, Verl, and your specific needs. So that's number 1. And so work with your agents on how to have communication that is specific to the consumer. And so to give you an example, somebody asked what school district is in. Okay, that happens to be in the Johns Creek High School District. And then the right follow-up questions when it becomes consumer specific is, Verl, is the high school district important to you? Oh, it is. Great. Can you tell me why? And then who's going to be going there and what grades are they going to be in and all that stuff. These are a lot of things that your agents do naturally. But in most cases, here's the communication. Hey, Verl, you wrote in about 1234 First Street. Do you want to buy that house? And then the next day we say, hey, Verl, I'm calling up about 1234 First Street. Do you want to buy that house? And then a few weeks later, I call back and, hey, I'm calling back about 1234 First Street. Do you want to buy that house? Well, you can see that is not consumer centric. That is product centric. That is housing, condo, townhome specific or centric. And when we have conversations that are specific on the product, we lose the ability to interact. Okay. So now as leaders, can I jump into another subject? And this is something I'm seeing, Verl, everywhere, is that team members don't know how to follow up with leads who are looking to buy or sell in longer than 90 days. Are you seeing that? If you're
long-term, they avoid it, or they avoid it altogether, or they go through the motions without trying to connect.
That's exactly right. And so I'd love to kind of do a little poll and see if people who are on are having the same problem. You know, they know how to follow up with somebody who needs to buy or sell in the next 90 days because you can talk about the house, the neighborhood, the swimming, tennis, the schools, you can talk about that. But the reality is when somebody wants to buy longer than 90 days, you have an issue, and the issue is they don't know what to say. And as Julie Timms is so famous for saying, we don't want them to smell our commission breath. And, you know, we don't want to follow up and say, hey, do you want a house? Do you want to buy the house? Do you want to buy the house? Hey, Verl, I've already figured your sales price times 3%, and that's just the amount of commission I'm looking for. So if you could go ahead and buy the house, it would really work out great for me. And I know we're exaggerating. So here's what we're doing with the teams we're working for is we're giving people communication they can have with their C prospects that also gets combined with their top 50 program. So the top 50 program this month was we're giving away a free Valentine's Day item. And in a lot of our teams, we had teddy bears given away or chocolates given away, or we gave away little pizzas that say we love our clients. So we did all kinds of Valentine's Day stuff. But then we went into a consumer-centric, a market-centric communication, meaning, Verl, did you know that interest rates today are 1% lower than they were this time last year? Did you know that, Verl? It might not be important to you, but if someone gets a $300,000 mortgage today, they save $53,000 in interest over the life of that loan compared to 1 year ago today. Now, Verl, whether you are refinancing or purchasing or investing, the savings are all the same. Now, are you or anyone you know interested in making any mortgage-related changes this year?
Probably I am now. 53 grand is a lot of money.
And by the way, I did a calculation. If you compared those numbers to the average interest rate in the 1980s, the savings is $22,000 a year. It's actually a year, not over the life of the loan. So
Wow.
What we're trying to do, Verl, is we're trying to find interesting information about the market that we can use to follow up with people who may or may not be ready to buy a home. And so I know it seems so weird, but we have to help our people figure out what to do and what to say.
So it's more than just slick dialogue. It's not just a quickie dialogue. It's actually caring about the person enough to give them something of value in the interaction.
So when we get a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to talk about SBO, service before opportunity, or serve before opportunity, and it is genuinely served. So I was in Los Angeles a few days ago working with some clients, and we were trying to figure out what their messaging should be because they didn't want to use $300,000 mortgages because in most places the mortgages are $800,000 or $900,000, not $300,000. And so they decided that they would talk about a couple of their new law changes that allow people to move their tax basis from one property to another property, and they're called Prop 60 and Prop 90. And so they decided for the next month they were going to educate people on this. So my question for you is, as a leader, can you give people the communication they need to have with, number one, their top 50 people? So it is, here's my gift, I love you, I want you to give me referrals, and let me give you some cool information about what's going on in the market, because that might activate their ability to give you a referral, because now they're thinking about something. You're not going to believe this. I talked to Cleve earlier today, and he said XYZ, and then also they can use that same communication for all of their C prospects. It's really, yeah.
I was going to say, most of the people on the call are not coaching clients, and they don't know what the top 50 is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So the Top 50 is a program we use at Workman Success Systems that is designed to teach our team leaders and their prospects how to generate 86 closings a year, working with the 50 people most likely to give them a referral 1 hour per day. And it really, Verl, just takes the communication and the level of touch you have in interaction with 50 people, and it just ratchets it up, because it plans how are we communicating, what are we communicating, and then it has a monthly activity that's with it. Thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot that we had guests on.
Well, the content that you're sharing is so valuable, but if you don't know who you're calling or why you're calling or what the purpose is, it's to establish yourself as a professional, is to be at the front of their mind at the moment real estate comes up, and have them know that you're interested in serving. And if they know that, then they're more likely to send you that business. But if they don't, because you don't give them any value in the interaction, then there's no value in the call. So I love that you're talking about the real client-centric communication.
Yeah, and it is not everybody has it. There are some people in real estate who do a really good job. But I want to set up a scenario before we go to the next slide. If someone sent you an email at 10 o'clock at night after you were exhausted from a long day, and they said, hey, Verl, it is Bill. You helped me and my wife buy our house 5 years ago, and you did such a great job that I wanted to reach out to you for some advice. We're in the process of working with another realtor to buy a home in this particular neighborhood, and I'd like to know your thoughts on whether or not the timing of us making the purchase now makes sense, meaning should we wait a few months? And also, I'd love to know if you would suggest for me your best home inspector. And when you listen to that scenario, if you think about yourself during that scenario, I'm going to tell you that you have not created the right concept of serving people. If your default position is, I would answer the questions and move on with life, because what goes around comes around. Meaning, if I do the right things for them today, there are chances that I will have other opportunities in the future. And that is a tough, tough, tough example. And I invite you, by the way, as team leaders or as even agents, to ask that question of people around you, because I will tell you that their default answer is, I would tell them to stuff it right now.
My default went to, where have I failed this client, to have them love me and use somebody else. My default went to, what was I not doing to be at the front of their mind? I wasn't thinking whether or not to serve them, because I would, but I was trying to figure out where I failed.
But the reality is even that is a very selfish thought. And so
Totally.
What we have to do is think of that from where did I miss delivering value to them? So I just think that's a great example. So let's talk about, people talk about knowing your why. And people talk about knowing your why all the time. Now, the issue is that most people are not, they're not really understanding how to get to the why. So most people tell you, well, my why is I want to save money, and my why is I want to support my family, and my why is I want my kids to be able to go to college. But the why really comes from somewhere else. And so I want to tell you that most often someone's why comes from a dark place in their past. So it comes from something they experienced that they would rather not experience in the future. And so people who say, I want to provide stability for my kids and give them all the opportunities, it could be because they didn't feel like they had that, and they're looking to do something different. And so it sounds terrible to say that keep fishing until you get the why. That almost would sound like some kind of personality disorder from the past, but that's where the whys come from. And so for me, I like to give good service. I like to produce a certain amount of income. I like to stay busy. But the reality is that, number one, I don't want to be subject to the whims of anyone else, like anyone else. And it's because I grew up in the direct sales business, where everybody in that business was subject to the whims of everybody. And it was painful to watch. They'd get people so strung out on the money that they would have to sort of agree to anything in order to stay there. So that's number one. And number two, I want to be somebody. I want to be somebody. And the reason I want to be somebody is because when I grew up, I felt like nobody. And it's not anybody's fault. My dad didn't mean to do it. He's a great dad. He loved me. I wouldn't trade my past for anything. But the reality is that I didn't feel like somebody. And I just want to be somebody. So when I learn something so I can teach it, or I think through something so I can articulate it well, it could be because I want to be somebody. And so everybody's whys come from a very, very deep place, and it motivates every single bit of their behavior. And you know, a lot of times they can keep it under control, and sometimes they can't keep it under control. And if you understand their why, you can absolutely, as a leader, help them get there.
You know, I had a coaching consult call with someone who struggles with their why, because they came from a good family, they were loved as children, they grew up with faith, they have financial security, not wealth, but financial security. They're in a good relationship with their spouse and their children, and they don't have this deep, meaningful, dark place that a why can come from. What do you say to the person who just wants to love the game?
You just got to keep talking about it. There is something there, Verl. It doesn't mean you can get the why in the first place. And they're not easy to get. And in most cases, people will sort of try to cover it up. And, you know, most of the reasons for why people avoid talking about, meaning they don't really want to talk about that. And you just have to it's nothing wrong with somebody giving you a surfacey why. But when you have the opportunity as a leader, you need to continue to dig and probe and try to figure out what the real why is. So I wish I could have a specific answer for you. If you don't think you got the right one, you just keep talking about it. You'll find it.
Yeah. And everybody has I like to say it's the core motivating why.
Yeah.
Which is, when you get down into that core, it's just different. It's
in most cases, Verl, when we have clients who get really, really successful, they get money, they get everything, and they forget what made them tick in the first place. And what they really need to do is to help other people find what they needed to find. And so
Yep.
I have people all the time who say, well, I don't know what it is. And it's like, you know, your why as a team leader needs to either be consumer centric or agent centric, one of the two. And so my why is a very consumer centric, meaning we want our clients, I want my clients, my coaching clients to be the best educated about anything. So see, my why for them fits into my overall why for me.
Because it allows you to feel important when you deliver it.
It allows me to feel like I'm somebody. And it's embarrassing to say that in front of a group, but it gives me what I felt like I was missing that I need.
It's a validation. I don't think it's something to be uncomfortable with. I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, capital. We got the next slide. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there's a ton of money flowing into real estate. And the money is not flowing in to help the traditional or the existing real estate brokers and agents make more money.
Nope.
So I want everybody to understand, first of all, the competition that comes into the real estate business, especially when it comes in all at the same time, is actually good, because if a lot of competition flows in at the same time, then all the competition starts to cannibalize the other competition that's flowing in. So in our case, we need to encourage as much of it as fast as possible, and we need to celebrate it, because once all the newness burns off, then you start getting back to the reality of the world. So I want to give you a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, the reason there's so much capital that flows into the real estate business is because there were $100 billion in commissions paid out in the U.S. in 2018. And so the rest of the world thinks that we earn about 50 of the 100 billion. They think that based on the services we provide and how we do our industry, they think it's weird. Because, you know, if we help a seller sell a house for $10,000 more, we only make $300 more. If we help a buyer pay $10,000 more for a house, we get paid $300 more. And so they think that the world in the real estate world doesn't work correctly. And so they're trying to solve our problems, and they legitimately think we have problems. Now, I think the people I work with don't have problems, and they provide real good value. But don't be surprised when people come in and start to compete with you, because they don't think we earn the full 100 billion that we're getting paid anyway. Okay? So I'm sorry, you got a comment?
Well, no. So tie that together for me, though. So because there's lots of capital coming in,
Yep.
What does that mean to me? What does that mean to me as a leader?
So go to the next slide. And so the capital that comes into real estate, they think that the process is too slow, there's not enough certainty, and it's very inconvenient. And they're trying to solve those problems for consumers. So most of my teams that are in big metro areas, you know, they have lots and lots of competition, and the competition message is speed, certainty, and convenience. So my thought for all of the leaders out there is, from a messaging standpoint, you need to figure out how to message speed, certainty, and convenience. And in so many cases, people do not understand how to do that. And so let me give you an example, and I've mentioned this before, Verl, you might remember it, but take a calendar, like an old, this happens to be an iPad, but take an old style calendar that you can open up, and on that front page, it has all 12 months of the year. Buy one of those at the store and take it with you on your next listing appointment. And we're going to try to address certainty and speed, and we're going to do it from a messaging standpoint. And so I'll sit down with you and I'll say, hey, Verl, I know this might seem weird, but before we take a tour of your home and before I really get a full needs analysis, I'd like to start with, what is your desired closing date? And I'm literally going to have this in my hand, and I'm going to be looking for the date you say. What date are you looking for? Oh, May the 15th. Okay, great. So let's shoot everything. Let's design everything for a closing date of May the 15th. Is that fair enough?
Yep.
Because see, what the iBuyers are giving people, what all of the people that are trying to get between you and the transaction is, they're trying to give them certainty. And we are accustomed to doing it all the time. So if you went on a listing appointment, Verl, and somebody said, well, my goal is to be in Provo, a bad example, my goal is to be in Phoenix. They might not move from Salt Lake City to Provo. My goal is to be in Phoenix by June the 3rd. Then you could sort of back into when was the ideal time for them to list. So we answer these questions all the time, and we help people figure this out, but we're not giving them certainty. Another example is when we go on a listing presentation or when we go on a buyer presentation, we're not always making it easier for everybody. So we go on a listing presentation, they have a new baby, and we as wonderful real estate professionals lecture them just a little bit on you need to let the buyer see it when they need to see it, because you never know when the hot buyer is going to come through. We don't want to reject any showings. We're doing all this stuff. And instead, because in most cases we're using automated showing software, maybe we could say, what are the times during the day that don't work for you from a showing standpoint? Let's block those off so you can get your dedicated time with your baby, because see, then we're selling convenience. And so we need to think about how we message speed, certainty, and convenience. And I, as a leader, would put those words on the board, speed, certainty, and convenience, and encourage my people, my team leaders that I'm coaching, my team members who work on my team, to come up with language for each one of those things.
People will pay for it. They will absolutely pay for speed, certainty, and convenience, and they'll pay top dollar for it.
All day long. Yep. And right now, by the way, when they sell to someone who offers something other than full service from an agent who really understands the business, I mean, they are really paying for it, because they're paying for it in the net proceeds out of the sale, or in how much they have to pay. So I want to talk a little bit about core values. First of all, everybody should have core values, but you need to have things in place to activate your core values. So if you have core values, and your core values are a list of one word, that would be like, we'll prosper till we succeed. It's not one word, it's just one statement. Or we will, what is it, Verl? We will
persist until we succeed.
I said we will prosper until we succeed. We will persist until I like that first one better. We will persist until we succeed. So people get the meaning of that as I will continue to work and 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 do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing until I succeed. That's not what that means. It means I'm going to continue to try to work at it and make little bitty course corrections and try different things until I figure out the solution. So the issue is, if we have a core value that does not state clearly what it means, then our agents determine their own meaning. And so if I am doing and saying the wrong thing on phone calls, if I just do more of that, then I'm more likely to succeed, which is simply not true. If I'm doing the wrong thing, I have to change what I'm doing and do more of it, and then there's a chance for me to succeed. And so I wish I could say, if you're doing this, it's not working, do this. No, but the point you need to make for people with that particular core value is, if what you're doing now does not work, please try something different. I had coaching clients in Wisconsin who were answering call capture calls. And they said, hey, Cleve, when we answer the phone, everybody hangs up on us. And I said, well, how do you answer the phone? And they said, well, I say, so-and-so, name of the brokerage, how can I help you? And I said, well, my suggestion would be, say anything but that. Like, don't say that ever again. If everybody hangs up, like, say anything. Answer the phone and say, Cleve's Dry Cleaners. Say anything but what you're saying. And I said, what do you think they're expecting? And they said, I think they're expecting an information hotline. Well, why do you think they're expecting that? Because it says 24-hour information hotline. So they started answering the phones, information hotline, how can I help you? 70% of the people stayed on the call. So what I'm saying is, you have to teach your people how to make decisions and judge themselves based on the core values. So here's what I want you to do as a team leader. When you have a meeting of your entire team, every single time, have the core values out, and have somebody on the team read one of your core values and have them tell you what that core value means to them. After you pick yourself up off the floor because you cannot believe how far off they are on the meaning of the core value based on your intention of the core value, then and only then will you see the gap between what they think and what they should think, and then you can start to help them understand the true meaning of the core value. So give the core values life by letting people talk about it and letting people be wrong about it and letting them have group discussions about it, because eventually you can lead them to the right place. And that one is huge, Verl. It is huge.
Yeah, I look at my own business and believe that there's a lot of opportunity for growth in bringing my core values to life with my team.
Here's the deal. And so your sales team, just so you know, has a different set of core values than the company.
Yeah, I heard about that yesterday.
And so it's not because they need it. They need to be very specific about their little world. And I think that's a beautiful thing when people start to say, here's who we are, especially if it fits into all of your overarching core values anyway. And so this whole thing of creating internal accountability. So if you're listening and you're at a place where you can write down a word, I want you to write down the word accountability on a piece of paper. In fact, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to write down the word accountability. And then I want you to put a big X through the word accountability. I want you to and now I want you to scratch through it with your pen where you can't even see the word accountability. because unfortunately accountability feels bad. So Verl, when you and I first started coaching together, and you would point out so delightfully 3 or 4 things that I was falling short on, I literally would come off the calls and I would be depressed. Now I would be okay because I could solve the problem, but I didn't know what to do with this accountability that felt negative to me. And you didn't do it on purpose. I mean, you were pointing stuff out, and some of the biggest changes I've ever made in my business were a result of you pointing out something that was not quite right. And so I want us to use a different word than accountability. I want us to use the word awareness. It is your job as a leader to create awareness among your team members so they know exactly where they are compared to where they should be. So I was on with a client, big client, and they have a huge ISA department. They farm out leads all over a province of Canada. And I said, what are your expectations for the lead flow? They said, well, we don't really have any. I said, well, if you don't have any expectations for the lead flow, I can promise you your agents don't. And so we had to come up with the expectation, and says, this is where you should be from our benchmarking, and here's where you are. How do we figure out how to fill in the gap? Or this is where you should be, and here's where you are. You are freaking amazing. Why don't you help us train people to exceed the benchmark like you are? So it's creating awareness. Verl, you've got kids.
Yep.
How does accountability work for kids who don't want to be held accountable?
They dig their heels in.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create awareness. I have 4 daughters. My oldest daughter was just genetically was spit out by me because she looks at the world the same way I do, which is not a good thing to do. So if my wife wants her to drive the car to the corner and turn left, she'll tell her to drive the car to the corner and turn right. Like literally, she wants to do her own thing. And so it is a matter of creating awareness for Claire that makes all of the difference in the world, because she and only she can determine whether or not she cares about achieving your goals. And it's such an interesting concept. Once kids are 15 or 16 years old, you really don't have the ability to raise them anymore. They're done. They're going to make their own decisions. Even if they still live in your house, they're going to still make their own decisions. So it's creating that internal accountability, meaning they need to be thinking. If I say to you, Verl, you're not meeting your goals, you need to go do this, it is a waste of time for me to say that. For us to review where you are compared to where you thought you should be, and for you to say, oh my gosh, I think I need to do this, this, or this, that is how all the magic happens. Okay, let's talk about meeting rhythm. So now this, if you're interested in this concept, it comes from John D. Rockefeller's habits, success habits. And he says that every company must have a communication rhythm. And so I want you to listen to this, Verl. That's a rhythm. Now, 1 meeting 1 week, no meeting next week, 2 meetings the week after, every meeting at 11 o'clock except next week's at 9, next week's at 2, next week, that's not a rhythm. So the key to the meetings is the rhythm with which they're held. And once you start them, you do nothing to change it. If you can't be there, the meeting runs without you and somebody else runs it for you. Because it's the rhythm of the meeting that matters, not sort of the subject of the meeting. The next thing is that if you run your team meetings or any kind of meeting and you feel too much pressure on yourself to deliver at those meetings, so if you're a leader and at the beginning of the week you feel almost negative that you got to go do one of those meetings again, I can tell you you're doing it all wrong. You're not doing it the way John D. Rockefeller did. So each meeting had an agenda, and the agenda was the people at the meeting reporting to him and not him dictating what they should or shouldn't be doing. Now, you have to have some meetings where you tell people what to do, but it is the rhythm, the consistency of the meetings. And in our model, we teach huddles on a daily basis. We teach weekly meetings, administrative meetings with all of your staff. And then we love to, and most of my coaching clients do, a training meeting that is just training. But once you pick a meeting schedule, don't you change it. And it's way more important what your people say to you during the meetings than it is what you say to them. So if you go to a meeting, you talk, let me show you something else. I'm going to tell you right now, if I judged your effectiveness on my thermometer right here, you'd come in right at the bottom, meaning there's nobody paying a bit of attention to what you say. If they, however, are controlling the subjects themselves and allowed to talk and share, you'll make some progress. And that is a hard concept for a leader who has all of the right answers. So in
true.
most cases, if they would just listen to us, they could actually be successful. But the problem is they don't know that if they would just listen to us, they could be successful. So therefore they won't. They don't get it. So I picture this girl. I picture her name is Sarah. I have no idea what her name is. But when I look at Sarah, I want to help her. And it's not because she is crouched over me, looking down, lecturing to me, telling me what I need to do. It's because she's small and she's closed and she's looking down. And so in a lot of cases, we feel like as leaders, entrepreneurs, that we can push people into doing things. But the reality is we can't push people into doing anything. And we would be a lot better off to say to someone, hey, I know exactly what you're going through because I was there too. And I can't tell you how many times I screwed things up when I first started in the business. And here was one of the ways I was thinking that turned out to be wrong. And once I learned to do something different, it turned out that the results were a lot better. So Verl, I don't know if you're interested in trying that, but it worked for me. And so maybe you might want to try it for you. They will listen to that. They will listen to way more stories about your insecurities, about your failures, about your uncertainties, about your worries. So if someone's not producing and we say to them, you've got to get your production up or we're going to get rid of you. Well, I can assure you that not only do they probably want you to get rid of them, but they like to stuff something up your nose while that conversation's going on, meaning it's them they're worried about. But if we say, hey, listen, I'm worried that I'm failing you in some way, that I'm not able to help you achieve what you need to achieve. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's not going to be okay with me. It bothers me. It really worries me. I have a hard time sleeping at night because I can't figure out what I need to do. Let's figure it out together. See, they might actually listen to that. So we talked about SBO. We talked about SBO, service before opportunity. Verl, you say serve before opportunity. They're exactly the same thing. And this was a concept that I heard you mention in the first place. And it really keeps everybody pure. And so let me tell you from a practical standpoint how we've used this concept with teams throughout the country. And it's really been from a recruiting standpoint. And so everybody out there is trying to recruit your agents and you're trying to recruit their agents. And the reality is we can't do much about the timing with which agents want to make changes, meaning they're either motivated to make a change or they're not motivated to make a change, and we can't fix that. But what we can do is we can seek to serve by training other people's agents. So Verl, you and I own 2 competing brokerages in the market area. And instead of trying to recruit your agents, I can just start trying to help them. And I can have a tool every month and I can say, this is a tool we used. And if you'd like to know how we use it, reach out and let me know. I probably wouldn't expect anybody to respond in the first place. But once I've sent out those messages 3 or 4 months in a row, people are starting to take notice and say, oh my gosh, this person is giving me more help and more assistance than my own broker. And so when I want to think about making changes, I'm going to do that. In a very competitive market, and I don't even want to mention the state, it's in the Midwest US, we have a broker where all of the whole brand's agent count went backwards. And they used SBO recruiting for the last year. And they're the only ones that had very significant gains in their recruiting. In the Houston market, we've had a brokerage almost triple in the number of agents that they have because they're using SBO recruiting. We're trying to serve people. We're trying to help them first before we look for opportunities for a sale or look for opportunities for them to join. So if you'll teach your agents to stop looking for people who want to buy or sell houses and start looking for people who need some help understanding the process of buying or selling a home or making decisions, you would be surprised at how much better they would be able to connect with people. It's really, really fascinating.
You know, when you talk about serve before opportunity or service before opportunity, and you say it was a concept you heard me introduce, I took the concept from when you were teaching me a concept of when you're frustrated, lean in and serve. And
Right.
It was when you're frustrated with somebody, instead of being frustrated and show your frustration, lean into them and see how can I serve you. And that whole concept in my mind went from how about we serve before we're frustrated? How about we serve all the time? And how about we just have that servant heart in the way that we approach life, the way that we interact with other people. And so it's a solid concept that is changing the way that I interact with people, because I think, how can I help you rather than what can I sell you or what can I get from you or how do I do something to you? It's a much happier way to live.
It is. Well, and in full disclosure, you know, the when something happens and I'm frustrated, the fact that I need to lean into it and serve them, I really created that concept for myself as a matter of self-defense, because I'm an entrepreneur, which means if something is in my way, I just want to cut it down, move it out of the way, and move on. Well, that doesn't work very well. So like Verl, you and I are trying to do this together. Well, if you just shut up and get out of my way, we'd both be fine. Well, that doesn't sit very well with you. And so, but that's an entrepreneurial standpoint, meaning, hey, I know what to do. I'm trying to tell you, I've done it fast, just be quiet, let's go. And so the reality is it was keeping me from being frustrated in my dealings with other people. So these are the Rockefeller habits. And I'm only closing with this because I think if you've never read a book that outlines the Rockefeller habits, you can find them in a book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. You can also find them in tons of other books. Vern is not the first person to write about them. But there are these habits. Keep your leadership team aligned and healthy. Is everybody focused on the same thing? What's our number one goal this quarter? We talked about the third one, communication rhythm is established. And that's what we talked about. Someone's accountable for everything. Ongoing employee input is collected. Core values are alive. We talked about that one. So that's the second of the three we talked about on today's call. Employees know company strategy. What are we trying to do? So the people in the customer service department should know what the sales department's doing, and vice versa, because if they don't have any appreciation for one another. Employees can judge themselves. That isn't creating internal accountability. And so they judge themselves by creating awareness. We have to make them aware of where they should be performing so that they can see the gap, so that they can work on their performance. And then company performance needs to be visible to everyone. So in most teams, the single most important leading indicator is the number of new face-to-face meetings we have with potential buyers and sellers. Not second or third, the new one, the first one. First we get face-to-face. If you have a Zillow Flex program, Zillow makes you set the appointment with someone before you know whether or not they're qualified, because they know the key to conversion is getting face-to-face with that prospect, because that's where the conversions happen. And so if you had the right scoreboard, you would say our goal is to have, if you had 5 team members, your goal should be 2 per team member per week. You should say, here's our goal is 10 new face-to-face meetings, 10 face-to-face meetings with new buyer or seller prospects. You literally should have a big board on the wall that counts those down. And when the team exceeds their 10 face-to-faces, you should celebrate it. When the team falls behind the 10 face-to-faces, you should take some corrective action to help them catch up, because everybody has got to be clear on what you need to do. And if everybody on your team is just interested in their own performance and they don't celebrate the team's performance, you're not creating the right culture in the first place.
There's so much information in this content. I hope everybody's enjoyed having Cleve share with us his thoughts on leadership and the 7 key critical steps to be more effective as a leader. Cleve, when you talk to people that are on this call, most of them are non-clients, people that haven't engaged in coaching with us. What advice would you give them of how coaching has changed your life and how you've seen it impact the lives of people that you serve?
So I bought a fairly large brokerage in 2006 in Atlanta. I'll let everybody on the call figure out what happened over the next 3 years. The business went straight to heck in a handbasket. It's like I got on the top of the screen machine at Six Flags and went straight to the bottom. And as part of my rehabilitation program, my broker owner at the time actually heard you speak, and he said, Cleve, I think you need to coach with Verl. And so I called you and I signed up. And I was probably not the best coaching client you've ever had, because when you already know everything to begin with, it makes you difficult to teach. And I'm giving you one of my personality flaws. But you helped me look at the world differently, and you gave me systems and programs and things to apply. And we went from, 300,000 to 600,000 to 900,000 to $1.1 million to $1.3 million to $1.6 million to $1.8 million. And we did all of that using the programs that you use. So I will tell you that regardless of whether or not somebody wants to coach with Workman Success Systems, in today's world, in order to be successful in real estate, you just have to be getting coaching from somewhere. So I encourage you, if it's not going to be Workman Success Systems, go somewhere else and get it. If you internally feel like there's another place for you to go, there's another level for you, there's something else you want to do, you have to have somebody who has been there before, who understands how to help you get there. And Verl, I think I'd probably still be successful if I hadn't met you in 2011, but I think I would be way less successful than if I hadn't met you in 2011. And so again, I'm not trying to say Verl's got to be the solution or Workman Success Systems got to be the solution. I'm just saying you need to have somebody help you get to the next level if you have that internal desire to get there.
I appreciate that, Cleve. Thank you for that. When you download the tools, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for a free coaching consultation. I encourage you to do that. Cleve works directly with our business consultants in helping them understand how to define where you are in your business and where you want to go and see if we're a good fit. So I encourage you to jump in, get engaged. Let's have 2020 be our best year ever. And if we can help you in that process, we'd love to serve. Thanks for being here, Cleve, and thanks for your great insight.
Just real quick, the downloads are a summary of my thoughts on each of the items that we discussed. So if you felt like you were missing something from a note-taking standpoint, just go in and download those, and you have my thoughts on each one of the slides for whatever they're worth.
Yeah, and please, and on the landing page, when you get there, just scroll to the bottom, and that's where you'll see the download. So look at the information that's there, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll get your downloads, and we'll see you on the next Workman Success call. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks, Cleve.
Bye.